So Left 4 Dead is a new game from Valve that's attempting to sort of take cooperative gaming to the next level in a way that Counter-Strike took multiplayer gaming to the next level back in '99 when it came out. Well, Left 4 Dead's a new game that we've been building now for a couple years, and we're really at the point now where we're taking it out and letting people play it and give us a lot of feedback. One of the biggest things that we try to do at Valve is to expose as many people as possible to the games before we release them to make sure that they're experiencing the game that we intended to create. So we're taking it out on the road right now to different events around the world as we put on that last layer of polish and get the performance together. Some of the hooks of the game is hinged upon this thing we're calling the AI Director, which is there to do three things basically. Number one, keep the gameplay dynamic each time. A lot of co-op games become very predictable and static after the first or second time you play through it. The AI Director is generating the population dynamically each time you play through the game. It's also sort of monitoring your success rate and scaling the difficulty based on, if you're doing well or if you're doing bad, it'll turn up or turn down sort of the action. And it's also looking at pacing, which is something we found to be very important in the creation of the Half-Life games, trying to avoid too much combat and making the player feel sort of battle fatigued, if you will, where they need to put the game down to take a break. Instead, we're trying to schedule those breaks in the game. The AI Director in Left 4 Dead is constantly monitoring the experience that all four of the players on the Survivor team are having. So if they have a lot of health, if they're very accurate and what have you, then it's going to turn up the degree of difficulty. If a player's down or two players are down and one guy's hurt a lot and the accuracy is kind of off, then it's going to back off a bit. One of the things that happens in single player games is that you set a difficulty level and then you just sort of jump into the game, and you as a player may get better at that particular game, but your overall skill set is going to stay the same. What's different in a co-op game is you have four people playing together, and about 15-20 minutes into the game they may start to gel as a team, in which case that difficulty needs to adjust, or else they're just going to own the game until they get to a checkpoint and they have to back out of the game and change the difficulty to keep it challenging. That's a huge disconnect that we want to try to avoid and sort of keep the game dynamically tailoring to the player's experience, whether it's that difficulty setting, the battle fatigue and scheduling the pacing, etc. There's two modes in the game. One is sort of the Survivor campaign, which is 1 to 4 players can play as one of the human survivors who are immune to the virus that's broken out and turned everyone into zombies. That'll go through 4 sort of sprawling campaigns. You can start a campaign, by yourself with 3 other players or 3 bots playing as the other human slots, and human players can join at any point during the campaign. Meanwhile, on the other side, we have what we're calling a deathmatch mode, where 4 survivors, 1 to 4 human players can take over the 4 survivor roles, and 1 to 4 humans can take over the boss infected roles. What's interesting about that is in most deathmatch games, the 2 sides are identical. They're just, in different color clothing or whatever, but they basically have the same firearms available to them or items available to them. In Left 4 Dead's deathmatch mode, the boss infected have no weapons whatsoever. All they have is sort of their super mutant abilities. So the smoker has this 50-foot tongue that he can grab and lasso people with. The boomer has this big belly full of gas that he can act as a big grenade and sort of come at you, and if you shoot him, he'll blow you up as well as himself. And what's interesting about that is, that class, the zombie boss infected, are sort of like a griefer's paradise, if you will. If you play, Counter-Strike or any other action multiplayer game, there's a lot of servers where people are there just kind of trying to be disruptive and sort of doing something counter to the base objective. Well, in Left 4 Dead, we've sort of built a game mode for them in playing as the boss infected. Our business model has sort of been very generous to us that we can take more time in the schedule, and we sort of get a bad rap for always being late, but then we're sort of forgiven, hopefully, because the quality is there at the end of the day. We always feel that, in Miyamoto's words, a game is only late until it's shipped, and a game that's bad is bad forever. So we always try to stay, sort of true to that principle. And Left 4 Dead is the first in a new game series. It's the first sort of in a subgenre, if you will, in the co-op space. And so we want to make sure that we're really doing it right. And a lot of the time that we're spending now is taking it out, letting people play it, getting feedback from folks, bringing people into Valve and listening to their feedback, players of all different skill levels, because we've all played games that were really good for core players, but weren't necessarily good for beginning players. We played games that were good for beginning players, but core players found it boring. And we always try to make sure that we're making the games appealing to both those audiences.